Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Today Journey. I am very happy that you are here with me today. My name is Jara, and I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable. Maybe you are sitting at home, maybe you are on your way to work, or maybe you are relaxing with a cup of tea or coffee. Wherever you are, take a moment to relax and enjoy this learning time. Today, we are starting a journey together into the English language. This journey is not about stress, pressure, or perfection. It is about learning in a calm and simple way. I want you to feel comfortable and confident while listening and practicing. English should feel friendly, not scary. There is one question that many English learners ask me again and again. They often say, "Jara, how can I stop sounding like I am reading from a textbook?" They want to know how to speak English more naturally. They want their English to sound smooth and real, like native speakers. This is a very common dream, and you are not alone if you feel this way. Many learners want to speak without stopping all the time. They want words to come out easily and clearly. They do not want to translate every sentence in their head before speaking. They want to feel confident when they open their mouth. The good news is this: it is possible. You can speak English naturally, but it does not happen overnight. Becoming fluent is not about learning more grammar rules. It is not about memorizing long lists of vocabulary. Those things can help, but they are not the main solution. The real change happens when you change how you practice English and how you think about the language. Small daily habits can make a big difference. In this episode, I will share simple and practical tips that you can use every day. I will also tell you real stories from real learners. These stories will show you that progress is possible. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be consistent. Small steps, taken every day, can help you sound more natural and confident. This journey is about discovering the fluent English speaker that already exists inside you. So take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders, and trust yourself. We are learning together, step by step. And one more thing before we continue. If you enjoy this podcast and want to learn more with me, please subscribe or follow. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a new episode. That way, we can continue learning and growing together. Now, let me tell you a story. It is a story about one of my students. His name was Carlos, and he came from Spain. Carlos was a very intelligent student. On paper, his English looked perfect. His grammar was excellent, and he knew a huge number of vocabulary words. He could write long essays that were clear, organized, and easy to understand. His writing showed strong logic and good structure. Many teachers would look at his work and think, "This student is very advanced." However, when Carlos started speaking, something changed. It felt like there was a wall between the English knowledge in his mind and the words coming out of his mouth. He knew what he wanted to say, but the sentences came out very slowly. He spoke carefully, thinking about every word. He pronounced everything correctly, but his English did not sound natural. For example, Carlos would say things like, "Hello, how are you today?" or "I am going to the supermarket." Every word was correct. There were no grammar mistakes at all, but his voice sounded flat, like a machine or a computer reading from a book. There was no flow. There was no rhythm. His speech had no emotion or energy. One day, Carlos told me about a holiday he had taken in the Swiss Alps. He was clearly excited, and he showed me a photo on his phone. The picture was beautiful. The mountains were tall and powerful. The sky was bright and clear. The snow looked almost magical, like something from a movie. Carlos looked at the photo and said, "The scenery was very beautiful. The mountains were big." I understood him perfectly. His English was correct, and his meaning was clear. But the words did not match the feeling of the photo. The language felt weak compared to how amazing the scene really was. Now, imagine what a native speaker might say in the same moment. A native speaker might look at the photo and say, "The scenery was absolutely breathtaking. The mountains were huge. You wouldn't believe how incredible it was." Do you hear the difference? The difference is not only vocabulary. It is emotion. It is expression. It is the way words connect and flow together like music. Carlos focused so much on being correct that he forgot to be expressive. He was afraid of making mistakes, so he chose very safe, simple sentences. Because of that fear, his fluency became frozen. His English was accurate, but it was not alive. This brings us to the heart of the problem and the most important lesson. If you want to sound natural in English, and if you want to sound fluent, the first step is not grammar. It is not vocabulary. The first step is your mindset. The most important thing you need to do is give yourself permission to be imperfect. This is not easy, especially for adult learners, but it is necessary. When you try to be perfect every time you speak, you lose your natural flow. You become tense and careful. Your mind works too hard, and your speech becomes slow and unnatural. But when you allow yourself to be human, when you accept small mistakes, your English starts to sound more relaxed, more expressive, and more real. Think for a moment about how children learn their first language. Do children worry about grammar rules? Do they stop and think, is this the past perfect tense or the simple past tense? Of course not. Children do not think like that at all. They are fearless explorers in the world of sound. They listen to the people around them. They copy what they hear. They make thousands of mistakes, but they do not feel ashamed. They do not stop. They just keep going. Imagine a child saying, "I go to the park." Is that sentence correct? Not exactly. The correct form is, "I went to the park." But what does the mother do? She does not stop the child and explain grammar rules. She does not give a long lesson about verb tenses. Instead, she smiles and says, "Oh, you went to the park. That's wonderful. What did you see there?" The focus is not on grammar. The focus is on communication, on sharing ideas, and on connection. This is a very important lesson for us as adult learners. We need to bring back a little of that childlike freedom. We need to stop being so afraid of mistakes. Because the truth is simple. Fear is often the biggest barrier to fluency. Fear builds a cage around us. It freezes us. Even when we know the right words, we are too scared to say them. Many learners think things like, what if my pronunciation is wrong? Or what if I use the wrong preposition? Or what if people do not understand me? These thoughts create pressure. Because of this pressure, the words stay locked inside the head instead of coming out naturally. The problem is not a lack of knowledge. The problem is fear. Let me share a personal story with you. When I was learning French, I experienced the same problem. I remember one day walking into a small bakery in Paris. The air was warm and full of wonderful smells. There was fresh bread, sweet pastries, and butter everywhere. I knew what I wanted to say. I had practiced the sentence many times in my head. But when it was time to speak, my fear suddenly appeared. I worried about my accent. I worried about my grammar. I worried about sounding silly. For a moment, I almost said nothing at all. But then I reminded myself that communication is more important than perfection. I took a deep breath and spoke anyway. The sentence was not perfect, but the baker understood me. She smiled, answered me, and life continued. That moment taught me something very powerful. Fluency grows when fear becomes smaller. This is the same lesson for you. To sound natural in English, you must allow yourself to speak imperfectly. That is how real progress begins. All I wanted that day was something very simple, a croissant. But even that felt difficult. I was extremely nervous. My hands were sweating, and my heart was beating fast. I kept repeating the sentence in my head again and again. I worried about my accent. I worried about the rolling R sound in French. I wanted to sound perfect, and that pressure made everything worse. Finally, it was my turn to speak. The baker was a kind older woman with a friendly smile and a flower on her apron. She looked at me patiently and waited. At that moment, my mind went completely blank. I froze. The words that I had practiced so many times simply disappeared. Panic took over. Instead of speaking, I pointed at the croissant and mumbled something that did not make sense. It probably sounded like complete nonsense. The woman did not laugh. She did not look annoyed. She simply smiled kindly, held up a croissant, and said, "Un croissant." I nodded quickly, paid, and rushed out of the shop. My face was red with embarrassment, and I felt terrible. For the rest of the day, I felt like a failure. I kept thinking about that moment and telling myself I was bad at French. But later, as I sat by the River Seine, eating that warm and delicious croissant, something suddenly became clear to me. I realized that I had actually succeeded. The baker understood me. She gave me exactly what I wanted. The communication worked. The only reason it felt like a failure was because of my fear. The fear made the moment feel bigger and more negative than it really was. In reality, nothing bad happened at all. From that day on, I made myself a promise. I promised that I would focus on connection, not perfection. This is why this lesson matters so much. When you let go of the need to be perfect, something special happens. You begin to take risks. You start trying new words. You experiment with different sentences and expressions. Yes, you will make mistakes. You will make many mistakes. But here is the secret. Mistakes are not failures. Every mistake is a step forward on your journey to fluency. Each mistake teaches you something new. Each mistake makes you a little braver. Little by little, your confidence grows and your English becomes stronger and more natural. Now it is time for your first piece of homework. For the next 7 days, I want you to practice speaking English without fear. Just for 1 week, give yourself permission to be imperfect. Look for small opportunities to speak every day. It could be ordering a coffee, asking for directions, talking to a classmate, or even speaking to yourself at home. The goal is simple. Speak, connect, and keep going. When you speak English, I want you to focus on only one thing: getting your message across. Do not worry about grammar. Do not worry about pronunciation. Do not worry about sounding perfect. Your only goal is communication. Speak. Make mistakes. Smile when they happen. Learn from them and move on. This small change in mindset, from perfection to connection, is the true foundation of fluency. Everything else is built on this ground. When you stop chasing perfection, you free your voice. Your English becomes more natural because it is no longer trapped by fear. You start speaking more, and that is how real progress happens. Along with accepting imperfection, there is another very important step on your journey. You need to find your personal motivation. In other words, you need to find your why. Ask yourself honestly, why are you learning English? Many people give answers like, I want a better job, or I need it for work. These answers are not wrong, but they are often too weak. When learning becomes difficult, and it will, these reasons may not be strong enough to keep you going. Motivation must be emotional. It must touch your heart, not just your mind. Let me tell you a story about a woman I once coached. Her name was Elena. She was a grandmother from Argentina. Her son had married an American woman, and together they had 2 young children. Elena's English level was very basic. When she visited her family, she loved being in their home. The living room was always full of laughter, noise, and energy. But even though she was physically there, she felt invisible. She felt like an outsider. She could see her grandchildren running around, telling jokes, singing songs, and watching cartoons. She could hear their voices, but she could not fully understand their words. She could not read them a bedtime story. She could not ask them about their day at school. She could not easily express her love in words. Her English level created a wall of silence between her and the people she loved most. And that wall hurt her deeply. But Elena had something very powerful. She had a strong why. She did not want English for exams, certificates, or job promotions. She wanted English for connection. She wanted to understand her grandchildren's favorite cartoons. She wanted to laugh at their jokes. She wanted to tell them stories about her own childhood in Argentina, even if the English was simple and imperfect. This motivation was stronger than her fear. It was stronger than her embarrassment. She was no longer afraid of making mistakes because the goal was bigger than perfection. She was not practicing for a test. She was not studying to impress anyone. She was practicing for moments that mattered, for shared laughter, for understanding, for hugs, and for love. Because of this deep motivation, Elena spoke whenever she could. She made many mistakes, but she did not stop. Little by little, her confidence grew. Her English became clearer. And most importantly, the wall between her and her grandchildren slowly began to disappear. This is the power of finding your why. When your reason is strong and emotional, it gives you the courage to speak, even when your English is not perfect. And that courage is what leads to true fluency. Because of this deep motivation, learning English no longer felt like a boring chore for Elena. It did not feel like homework or pressure. It felt like a mission. It had meaning. It had purpose. And that made all the difference. Now it is your turn. Let me ask you an important question. Why are you learning English?
Take a moment to think about it.
Is it because you want to understand the lyrics of your favorite songs? Is it because you want to travel the world and speak with confidence? Is it because you want to grow in your career or find better opportunities? Or maybe, like Elena, your reason is personal. Maybe you want to connect with someone you love. Whatever your reason is, take it seriously. Do not rush the step. Think about it deeply. Then, write your reason down. Put it somewhere you can see it every day. You can place it on your desk, on your phone screen, or on the wall in your room. This reason will be your fuel. It will keep you moving forward, especially on days when learning feels difficult or slow. Now that we have built a strong foundation, a fearless mindset, and a clear motivation, it is time to talk about something practical. Let's talk about the sound of English. Learning English is not only about grammar rules or vocabulary lists. It is also about the music of the language. English has its own rhythm and melody. Linguists talk about stress, rhythm, and intonation. These things are very important because they can completely change how your English sounds and even what your words mean. Let's start with word stress. In English, not all syllables are equal. In words with more than one syllable is stressed more than the others. This stressed syllable is usually longer, louder, and a little higher in pitch. If you stress the wrong syllable, the word can sound strange or even change meaning.
Let me tell you a story about this.
I once worked with a young man from Colombia. His name was Javier. He was about to give his very first business presentation in English. He was extremely nervous. His heart was beating fast, and his hands were shaking. His topic was the company's financial performance. He wanted to begin by talking about the company's official sales record. In English, the noun record is stressed on the first syllable, record. But when Javier stood up in front of everyone, his nerves took control. His mind went blank. He opened his mouth and said, "Good morning. Today I want to record." At that moment, some people in the room looked confused.
Why?
Because record sounds like the verb, not the noun. A small change in stress created confusion, even though the word itself was correct. This story shows why the music of English matters so much. Stress, rhythm, and intonation help your listener understand you quickly and easily. When you learn to hear and use them, your English sounds clearer, more natural, and more confident.
And do not worry.
Just like everything else, this is something you can learn step by step. With practice, your ear will improve, your confidence will grow, and the music of English will start to feel natural to you. Record our sales performance. Javier accidentally placed the stress on the second syllable, which turned the word into the verb record instead of the noun record. Suddenly, people in the audience looked confused. Some of them even picked up their pens, as if they were being asked to write something down or start recording the meeting. This small mistake changed how the message was understood. Javier noticed the confusion in the room, and of course, that made him even more nervous. His heart started beating faster. His voice became less steady. He tried to correct himself, but the pressure made it harder. He stumbled over his words, and his confidence dropped. All of this happened because of one small stress mistake. This is exactly why understanding stress and rhythm in English is so important. Javier's story teaches us a very clear lesson. Word stress matters. When he stressed the wrong syllable, communication broke down before he could even explain his main idea. Just one tiny change in stress completely changed the meaning of a sentence. Later, when Javier and I practiced together, we worked only on this one small detail. He learned to place the stress on the first syllable and say it clearly and confidently. Record. The change was small, but the result was powerful. Suddenly, he sounded more confident. He sounded more professional. And most importantly, he sounded clear and easy to understand. This is the key lesson here. Word stress is not only for advanced learners. It is not an extra or optional detail. It is a basic and fundamental part of being understood in English. When you use correct word stress, your listener does not have to work hard to understand you. Communication becomes smooth and natural. This kind of stress difference happens all the time in English. For example, take the word present. When the stress is on the first syllable, present, it means a gift. But when the stress is on the second syllable, present, it means to give something formally. The same thing happens with the word object. Object means a thing, but object means to disagree. If you stress the wrong syllable, people may still understand you, but they might feel that something sounds strange. And sometimes, like in Javier's case, they may become confused about what you really mean. One common problem for English learners is that they pronounce every syllable with the same strength. In many languages, this is normal, but in English, it does not sound natural. English needs contrast. Some parts of a word are strong, and some parts are weak. Let's practice together now. Try saying the word beautiful. The stress is at the beginning. Beautiful. Feel how the first part is stronger. Now say important. The stress is in the middle. I'm important. Finally say understand. The stress is at the end. Understand. Do you feel the difference? Different parts of each word carry more energy. This rhythm is the music of English. When you start noticing it and practicing it, your English will immediately sound clearer, more confident, and more natural. That strong beat is what makes your English sound alive and natural. But stress is not only important inside individual words. It is also very important in full sentences. This is what creates the rhythm of English. English is what we call a stress-timed language. This means that we give more energy and time to the most important words in a sentence. These are usually nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. At the same time, we say the smaller words very quickly and softly. Words like of, to, the, a, is, and are not the focus. They are light and fast. Let's go back to Carlos for a moment. Remember when he said, "The scenery was very beautiful." He gave every word the same weight and importance. Because of that, his sentence sounded flat and unnatural. A native speaker, however, would naturally stress the key words. They would say, "The scenery was very beautiful." The small words like the, was, and very are quick and soft, while the important words carry the meaning and the emotion. In English, the big words are the stars of the sentence. They stand out. They create a beat, almost like music. You can feel it as a pattern. Strong, weak, strong, weak. This beat is the rhythm of English, and once you start using it, your speech sounds more natural and easier to understand. Let's practice this together. Say this sentence out loud. I need to go to the bank to get some money. The stressed words are need, go, bank, and money. The rest of the words are quick and soft. Now say it again and feel the rhythm. I need to go to the bank to get some money. Now try another sentence. She wrote a long letter to her best friend. The The stressed words here are wrote, long, letter, and best friend.
Feel the beat as you say it.
This simple practice can make a huge difference in how natural your English sounds. So, how can you practice rhythm in a practical way? One of the best methods is listening. Listen to native speakers in podcasts, movies, TV shows, or even songs. While you listen, pay attention to which words sound stronger. You can even clap your hands or tap your finger to the rhythm of the sentence. This helps your brain feel the beat of English. Another very powerful technique is called shadowing. Shadowing means you listen to a speaker and repeat their words immediately, almost at the same time. You do not stop to think. You copy not only the words, but also the rhythm, the stress, and the melody of the voice. Shadowing trains your mouth and your ears together, and it is one of the best ways to develop a natural flow in English. The third part of the music of English is intonation. Intonation is the melody of your voice. It is how your pitch goes up and down when you speak. Intonation shows emotion. It helps you ask questions. It shows interest, surprise, doubt, or confidence. Without intonation, English can sound flat or robotic. When stress, rhythm, and intonation work together, your English starts to sound alive. You may still make grammar mistakes, and that is okay. But people will understand you more easily, and your speech will feel more natural. This is how English moves from being just correct to being truly fluent. Intonation is one of the most important parts of speaking English naturally. Intonation is the melody of your voice, how your pitch rises and falls when you speak. If your intonation is completely flat, your English can sound boring, robotic, or uninterested. People might think you are tired or do not care about what you are saying, even if your words are correct. For example, listen to this statement, I live in London. When you say it naturally, your voice falls at the end on the word London. This falling pitch tells the listener that your thought is complete. The sentence feels finished, clear, and natural. Intonation works like music. The way your voice moves up and down gives signals to the listener. These signals can change the meaning of a sentence, even when the words stay the same. For example, let's look at a question. Do you live in London? Here, your voice rises at the end, especially on the word London. That rising sound tells the listener you are asking a question and expecting an answer. Listen carefully to the difference. Statement. I live in London. Falling tone, finished thought. Question. Do you live in London? Rising tone, expecting an answer. This simple pattern, falling for statements, rising for yes/no questions, is one of the foundations of English intonation. But intonation does much more than just signal questions and statements. It can completely change the meaning of the same sentence. Imagine I say, that's a great idea. If I say it with energy and a high falling tone, it means I truly think your idea is wonderful. But if I say it slowly, stretching the words with a low rising tone, that's a great idea, it can mean the opposite. I am being sarcastic. The words are exactly the same, but the melody of my voice changes the meaning completely. Intonation also shows emotion. If my friend tells me she won the lottery, I would not say that's amazing in a flat, robotic voice. Instead, my voice would rise and fall with excitement. That's amazing. The intonation shows how I feel, happiness, excitement, or surprise. It makes my English feel alive. Intonation even helps when we make lists. For example, I bought apples, bread, and milk. My voice rises on the first items, apples and bread, but falls on the last item, milk. That falling tone on the last word shows the list is finished. This small detail makes your speech clearer and easier to understand. Intonation is everywhere in English. It signals questions, shows emotions, organizes information, and makes your English sound natural and alive. Even if your grammar and vocabulary are correct, without intonation, your English can sound flat and hard to follow. By practicing stress, rhythm, and intonation together, your English starts to sound musical. It flows naturally and people understand you more easily. Even if you make small mistakes, your speech will feel confident, clear, and expressive. This is how English moves from being correct on paper to being fluent and alive in real life. That falling tone on the last word of a list shows the list is finished. Let's try it together. I need to buy some paper, pens, and notebooks. When you say it, the voice rises on paper and pens, and then falls on notebooks. Do you hear the melody? That little tune makes your speech easier to follow. It helps people understand you, even if the words themselves are simple. So, how can you practice intonation? Here's a fun and simple activity. Find a short clip of a conversation from a podcast, a movie, or even YouTube. Listen carefully. Pay attention to the way the speaker's voice rises and falls. With your finger, draw the intonation pattern in the air. Does the voice go up?
Does it fall down?
Does it rise and fall in the middle? After you notice the pattern, try to copy it. Don't just repeat the words. Copy the music of the sentence. At first, it may feel a little strange or unnatural, like learning a new song. But with practice, this melody will become natural. Soon, your English will sound more alive and expressive. The next step is something called connected speech. This is one of the biggest secrets to sounding fluent, and it is something textbooks almost never teach. When native speakers speak, they do not pronounce every single word slowly and clearly. Instead, the words flow together. They link, merge, and sometimes even change or disappear. This is why fast English can be so hard to understand for learners. Connected speech is what makes English smooth and natural. Let's take an example. What are you doing? If you read it word by word, it might sound like, what
Are you
doing? But a native speaker in casual conversation almost never says it like that. Instead, it becomes whatcha doing? The what and you link together, and the are often disappears. This is not lazy English. It is normal, natural English. Learning connected speech helps you understand fast-spoken English and makes your own speaking sound fluent and relaxed. Let me share a story about this. One of my students, Paolo from Italy, faced a big challenge with connected speech. Paolo was visiting London for the first time. He was a very serious, hardworking student. He knew all the grammar rules and had practiced his textbook recordings many times. The recordings were slow, careful, and clear. He could speak correctly, but when he tried to listen to real conversations, he struggled. One day, Paolo was standing at a busy bus stop in London. He wanted to ask a local man for directions. In his mind, he rehearsed the sentence perfectly. "Excuse me, could you please tell me which bus goes to Oxford Street?" He said it slowly and clearly, following the textbook pronunciation. The man looked at him and smiled, but then replied quickly, "Oh, you want to go Oxford Street?" "Yeah, catch the number 12 bus. It stops right there." Paolo froze. His carefully prepared English sounded very different from the fast, connected speech he heard. He could not understand some words, and the rhythm was completely different from what he practiced. This moment was frustrating, but it taught him an important lesson. Real English is fast, flowing, and connected. By learning to notice and practice connected speech, Paolo eventually started to understand native speakers better. He also started to speak more naturally, without sounding like he was reading from a textbook. Connected speech, rhythm, stress, and intonation together are the secret ingredients of fluent English. If you practice them every day, you will sound more confident, natural, and easy to understand. It is not about being perfect. It is about sounding alive, expressive, and real. Paolo was standing near Big Ben looking a little lost. He saw a friendly man and decided to ask for help. He politely said, "Excuse me, sir. How do I get to the tube station?" The Londoner smiled and answered quickly, "Oh, yes, simple. You're going to want to go right at the corner, and then it's just down the road." To the Londoner, it was easy. But for Paolo, it was a disaster. His face went completely blank. He didn't understand most of what the man said. To his ears, it wasn't English. It sounded like noise. Why was this happening? The man was speaking with connected speech. In connected speech, words blend together, some sounds shrink or disappear, and sentences flow quickly. Paolo was used to speaking and listening slowly, word by word. He wasn't ready for English at full speed, where words link together naturally. Think of English like building with Lego blocks. If you only have single bricks, you have to build slowly, one piece at a time. But if you already have larger sections built, you can snap them together quickly and build something much bigger in less time. That's exactly what collocations and phrases do for your English. They give you ready-made blocks of language that you can use instantly, without stopping to think. Let me give you another example. One of my students, Aisha from Morocco, discovered this while preparing for a big job interview. At first, she tried to memorize single, impressive words like synergy and innovation. But when we practiced mock interviews, she struggled to use those words in natural sentences. She sounded forced, stiff, and unsure. Then we changed her approach. Instead of memorizing only big words, she began learning chunks of language, phrases that are used together naturally. For example, she learned expressions like play a key role, gain valuable experience, and meet a deadline. Suddenly, her answers flowed smoothly. She didn't have to stop and search for words. She could just use the blocks she already had, like snapping Lego pieces together. The great thing about collocations and chunks is that you can pick them up from listening and reading. Every time you hear or see a phrase more than once, take note of it. Write it down. Repeat it. Try using it in your own sentences. Over time, these chunks become part of your natural speech. They make your English faster, smoother, and much easier to understand. Collocations don't just help you speak faster, they also make you sound more like a native speaker. Using single words alone can make your English sound correct but stiff, like reading from a dictionary. But when you use phrases and chunks, your sentences have rhythm, flow, and connection. People can understand you easily, and your speech sounds natural. However, learning vocabulary and collocations is only part of the picture. To truly speak fluently, you also need rhythm, stress, intonation, and connected speech. These are the tools that make your English sound alive, expressive, and confident. When you combine all of these chunks of language, natural rhythm, word stress, intonation, and connected speech, you begin to sound like a real English speaker. Paolo's story shows that even if you know the grammar perfectly, fluent English requires more than just knowing words. You need to practice listening, noticing patterns, and using ready-made language blocks. When you do, suddenly English doesn't feel like a puzzle anymore. It becomes something you can use, something that flows naturally, like music. To really connect with people in English, it's not just about words and grammar. You also need to understand register. Register means choosing the right words and expressions for the situation. How you speak to a close friend is very different from how you speak in a job interview. For example, with a friend, you might say, "I'm going to grab a bite." It's casual, relaxed, and natural for everyday conversation. But in a job interview, you would say, "I'd like to have something to eat." The meaning is the same, but the style is different. Learning register helps you sound not only fluent, but also appropriate for each situation. You won't just be understood. You'll also sound confident and professional when it matters. One of the best tools to improve your vocabulary, phrases, and register is a language journal. This is slightly different from a normal vocabulary notebook. In a simple vocabulary notebook, you might write a word and its meaning like beautiful equals nice to look at. But a language journal goes deeper. You write down the whole sentence you heard, who said it, and the situation. You can even note how it made you feel. For example, imagine you are watching a movie. A character looks at a sunset and says, "It's absolutely breathtaking." In your journal, you would write it like this. Word/phrase, absolutely breathtaking. Meaning, extremely beautiful. Where I heard it, movie island sunset. Who said it? A character watching the sun go down. how it felt. Very emotional and powerful. My own sentence. The view from the top of the mountain was absolutely breathtaking. When you do this, you are connecting the words to a memory and an emotion. This makes it much easier to remember and use later. The next time you see something beautiful, the phrase absolutely breathtaking will come to your mind automatically. But words and phrases alone are not enough. In English, we also need to focus on how words sound together, their rhythm, and the melody of your voice. This is what makes your speech natural, smooth, and easy to understand. It includes stress, intonation, and connected speech. Stress is how some words or syllables are emphasized more than others. Intonation is the rise and fall of your voice, which adds emotion and meaning. Connected speech is how words link together when people speak naturally. All of these elements work together. Words give you the building blocks. Chunks and collocations help you speak smoothly. Register helps you choose the right tone for each situation. Stress, rhythm, intonation, and connected speech make your English sound alive and expressive. Without these, even perfect grammar can sound stiff or robotic. With them, your English becomes musical, flowing, and natural. Here's a simple tip. Whenever you learn a new phrase, try saying it out loud in different situations. Imagine you are talking to a friend, explaining it to a teacher, or sharing it in a conversation with a stranger. Change your tone, rhythm, and energy. Listen to how it feels and sounds. This will help you not just remember the phrase, but use it confidently in real life. Remember, fluency is not about perfection. It's about connection, expression, and flow. Every phrase you practice, every sentence you stress correctly, every melody you copy, brings you closer to speaking English naturally. Keep a language journal. Pay attention to the sounds, and always connect words to feelings or situations. Your English will grow stronger every day, and soon it will sound like music, alive, expressive, and truly yours. To speak English naturally, it's important to use idioms and phrasal verbs. These make your speech colorful, interesting, and closer to how native speakers talk. Idioms are phrases where the meaning is not obvious from the words themselves. For example, if someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs," you might imagine animals falling from the sky. But the real meaning is that it is raining very heavily. Idioms can be funny, surprising, and sometimes confusing. Let me share a story. One of my students, Isabelle from France, started her first office job in Toronto. She worked hard and wanted to impress her boss. On Friday, her boss said, "Great work this week, Isabelle.
I'm heading out now.
Can you hold down the fort until Monday?" Isabelle froze. She thought a fort was a big castle used in a war. Hold it down sounded like she had to defend the office from an attack. She didn't want to seem silly, so she just nodded. Everyone left, and she sat at her desk, nervous and tired, pretending to guard the office all night. The next morning, her boss returned and was surprised to see her still there, half asleep with a coffee cup in hand. Isabelle explained she was holding down the fort. Her boss laughed and explained that the idiom simply means, "Take care of things while I'm gone." Nothing scary at all. This was embarrassing for Isabelle, but she never forgot the meaning after that. Stories like this show why learning idioms is so important. If you misunderstand them, it can be confusing or even funny in real life. Phrasal verbs are another important part of English. A phrasal verb is made of a main verb plus a small word, like a preposition or adverb. The meaning often changes completely from the original verb. For example,
Give up equals stop trying.
look for equals, try to find. Get along with equals, have a good relationship. Phrasal verbs can be tricky because you can't always guess the meaning from the words. For example, give up does not mean give something in the normal sense. It means to stop trying. Break down doesn't mean to physically destroy something. It can also mean a car stops working or someone becomes very sad. Here's why phrasal verbs are so useful. They're everywhere in real English. People use them all the time in conversations, movies, songs, and even emails. Using them makes you sound natural, fluent, and more like a native speaker. One way to learn idioms and phrasal verbs is to keep noticing them when you read, watch, or listen to English. When you hear a new one, write it down, understand its meaning, and try to use it in a sentence about your own life. For example, if you learn the phrasal verb call off, meaning to cancel, you could say, "We had to call off the picnic because it was raining." Another tip is to practice speaking these phrases out loud. This helps you remember them and also get comfortable with how they sound in real speech. Idioms and phrasal verbs are not just vocabulary. They are tools that help your English flow naturally. By learning them, you'll stop sounding like you are reading a textbook and start speaking English with real expression. You'll understand jokes, movies, and everyday conversations better. You'll also sound more confident because your sentences will have variety and color. In English, small phrases and phrasal verbs can completely change the meaning of what you say. For example, instead of saying, "I will collect you from the airport," a native speaker would say, "I'll pick you up from the airport." Instead of, "I will continue working," they might say, "I'll carry on working." And instead of, "I will start exercising," they might say, "I'll take up exercise." These small changes make your English sound natural, smooth, and alive. These phrases can be confusing at first because the meaning is often different from the words themselves. But this is how English is used in real life. Native speakers use these phrases all the time. The best way to learn them is similar to how you learn idioms. Notice them, write them in a journal, and practice using them in sentences about your own life. Over time, these phrases will become automatic. They will pop into your mind naturally when you speak, and your English will sound much more fluent. Now, we have covered many important pieces of fluent English. First, your mindset, allowing yourself to make mistakes and focus on communication instead of perfection. Next, the music of English, word stress, sentence rhythm, and intonation, which make your speech lively and expressive. Then, vocabulary, idioms, phrasal verbs, and phrases, which make your speech colorful and natural. And finally, the power of listening actively, noticing how native speakers talk in real life. But there is one more step you absolutely cannot skip. You have to actually speak. This seems obvious, but many learners spend years studying English, filling notebooks, watching shows, and listening to podcasts, but they rarely practice speaking. They feel nervous. They are afraid of making mistakes. They think, "I'll speak when I'm ready." Here's the truth. You will never feel 100% ready. Speaking English is like learning to swim. You can read about swimming. You can watch videos about swimming. You can even practice the movements on land. But the only way to really learn is to get in the water. In the same way, you can study English all you want, but fluency only comes when you speak. Let me give you an example. One of my students, Sophia from Brazil, knew this struggle very well. She loved learning English. She read books in English, listened to podcasts, and even wrote in English every day. But when she met a tourist visiting her hometown and tried to speak, she froze. The words would not come. Later, she told me, "It was like my brain knew the words, but my mouth refused to move." This is extremely common. Many learners know the language in their head, but they cannot speak it freely. The key to overcoming this is practice, patience, and courage. Start small. Speak to yourself out loud. Order coffee in English. Ask someone for directions. Even short conversations count. Each time you speak, you strengthen the connection between the words in your head and the words that come out of your mouth. You will stumble. You will make mistakes. That is normal, and actually, it is the fastest way to improve. The secret is to focus on communication, not perfection. When you speak with intention, when you focus on expressing ideas instead of avoiding mistakes, your English will start to flow. Slowly at first, then more confidently, and eventually with natural rhythm, stress, and intonation. That is how real fluency is built. Sophia knew all the words in her head, but when it came to speaking, her mouth refused to cooperate. She felt stuck. So, we made a simple deal. Every day, for just 5 minutes, she would speak out loud in English. Sometimes she practiced with me, sometimes with a friend, and sometimes alone in her room, talking to herself about her day. At first, it felt strange and awkward. It was like training a new muscle. She started small. One day she said, "Today, I went to the market." That was it. Just a simple sentence. The next day, she added a bit more. "Today I went to the market and bought some fresh fruit. The mangoes were delicious." Slowly, step by step, her sentences got longer and smoother. After a few weeks, something amazing happened. When she met a tourist in her town, the words started to come out naturally. Her brain and her mouth were finally working together. This is the secret of speaking fluently. Small, consistent practice every day. You don't need hours of speaking at first. Even 5 minutes a day is enough if you do it regularly. You can speak to a language partner online, join a speaking club, or even just talk to yourself. Describe what you're doing, tell a story, explain your day as if you were talking to a friend. The key is using your voice, because speaking is not only about knowledge, it is a physical skill. Think of it like music or sports. A musician practices scales to train their fingers. An athlete trains their muscles to move efficiently. When you speak English, you are training your tongue, lips, jaw, and breath. Your mouth and brain need to work together, just like a well-coordinated team. The more you practice speaking, the more your body learns the movements of English, and the easier it becomes to express your thoughts. Many learners focus only on grammar books, vocabulary lists, or YouTube lessons. Those are all helpful, but they cannot replace speaking practice. If you never open your mouth, you will never become fluent. You might know thousands of words, but if you cannot say them naturally, your English will feel frozen. Speaking is active, not passive. It requires energy, courage, and repetition. Start simple. Speak for a few minutes every day. Repeat phrases you hear in movies or podcasts. Tell short stories. Describe objects in your room. Gradually, your sentences will grow longer, your pronunciation will improve, and your confidence will soar. You'll begin to notice the rhythm, the word stress, and the melody of English in your own voice. You will start to sound more natural and expressive. Remember, fluency is a journey, not a race. Every time you speak, even if it feels imperfect, you are building your skills. Every mistake is a step forward. Every small sentence is practice for bigger conversations. Over time, these small daily efforts add up, and suddenly speaking English feels easy and natural. The secret is simple. Speak every day, even for a few minutes, and your fluency will grow steadily, like a tree reaching for the sky. Speaking English is not just about knowing words in your head. It's also about training your mouth and tongue, your lips, your jaw, and even your throat. All of these muscles need practice. If you don't use them, they stay weak. That's why sometimes you know exactly what to say, but the words don't come out smoothly. Your brain is ready, but your mouth isn't. To solve this, you need to build muscle memory. Muscle memory means your mouth learns to move in English automatically. When your muscles are trained, speaking becomes easier and more natural. One of the best ways to do this is called shadowing. It's simple but very effective. Here's how it works. Find a short audio clip of a native speaker. It could be from a podcast, a YouTube video, an audiobook, or a speech. Play the audio and try to speak at the same time as the speaker. Not after them, not repeating, but together with them, like a shadow following their voice. At first, it feels strange. You might miss words, get confused, or feel slow. That's normal. But if you keep practicing, your mouth will start to copy the sounds, the rhythm, and the melody of English naturally. Let me share a story. Anna, a student from Poland, had a strong accent and often spoke in a flat, monotone way. She felt it made her sound harsh or unfriendly, even when she was trying to be polite. she decided to try shadowing. Anna loved audiobooks, so she picked one read by a British actor with a calm, smooth voice. Every day, she shadowed the speaker for just 10 minutes. She didn't worry about understanding every word. Her goal was to copy the sound, the rise and fall of the voice, the pauses, and the flow of the sentences. The first 2 weeks were messy. Anna felt like her head was full of chaos. Words mixed up, sentences didn't match, and it felt awkward. But she didn't give up. After 1 month, she recorded herself speaking and compared it to an old recording. The difference amazed her. Her accent was still there, but her speech had rhythm, melody, and flow. She sounded more natural, confident, and expressive. Shadowing had trained her mouth and brain to work together. Shadowing works because it combines listening and speaking at the same time, which helps your brain remember patterns, sounds, and stress naturally. It's not about perfection. It's about copying the way native speakers actually speak. Over time, your accent may improve, your sentences will flow, and your speaking will feel effortless. You can start with just a few minutes a day. Find a short clip, press play, and speak with the speaker. Don't worry if you make mistakes or miss words. The goal is practice and repetition. The more you do it, the more natural your English will become. Shadowing trains your ears, your voice, and your mouth at the same time, building real fluency step by step. Remember, learning to speak English is like training any skill. You wouldn't expect to play the piano perfectly without practice, or to swim without getting into the water. Speaking is no different. Your mouth needs exercise, your voice needs rhythm, and your brain needs to connect words to movement. Shadowing is one of the fastest ways to make that connection. Even 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference.